Thank you so much, Natalia. And Jonathan, thank you for that wonderful talk. In fact, you kind of painted the future so beautifully. I was actually thinking whether I really need the renewal of my passport application to go through. I think all we need is a good internet connection. Great. I think we are, in this panel. We do so many of these panels, and few of you have joined us before this. At the same time, I think this panel is discussing some of the most pressing issues that our technology industry is facing, and that issue is talent. I think each one of us is facing the challenge at some form of the other, either in terms of people hiring or people leaving or demanding things that we don't know how to cater to. So to me, this is really, just as Jonathan said, I'm really looking forward to this exercise. And although we've been working with Turing to try and create thought leadership around this, but there's still so much unknown, right? And we are just trying to, throw light a little bit onto that. And I'm sure this session is going to really help all of us. And I'm sure the audience that is there and the others who can then benefit from the recording to actually look at certain areas that might actually be the right type of future. So with that, I think what I will do is I will jump into the roundtable section. We have about an hour plus, say, a few minutes to look at the audience questions as well. What I will do is, for the benefit of the audience, I will start with a quick icebreaker section with each of the panelists. And maybe I'll go first with Chris. So Chris, you've had a very interesting background, right? You're actually a founder of an e-commerce firm, and you kind of went private, and then you have looked at multiple different roles across the last 15 years, and each of these roles has been deeply associated with new technology, or at least at whatever technology was at the bleeding edge at that point in time, you seem to have been associated with that. And currently, you are the Chief Strategy Officer at Kofax and driving multiple strategic initiatives. And while I say that, I think I must congratulate you for the new investment round that you recently got in terms of TA Associates and Chris Clear Lake Investing. So kudos on that as well. My question is reflecting on your long association with technology and automation, new age technologies. How big a role do you think these technologies will play in this new world of Talent Cloud?
Well, first, always great to be with you. Want to acknowledge quite the panel today, Jonathan. Great way to kick us off. Love the optimism. I think there's going to be a dose of sort of where we are today and how you can help us sort of move forward. 'Cause I don't think any one of us have the answer. So we just need to put our heads together and sort of figure this out as a team. But I am looking forward to learning from my peers throughout this conversation. But if you look across every industry, it's very clear that software isn't just a solution for the business, but software is the business. And I think Jonathan started to allude to it. And it was Mark Andreessen that basically said about a little over a decade ago, that software is sort of eating the world. And that's essentially meaning that every business, every industry leader has become sort of a software business. It's really at the core of how it is that they operate to provide those digital experiences to their customers. And so I think the efficiency and the productivity gains from infusing software in how work actually gets done allows both for cost takeout and revenue lift opportunities. But that's primarily for the business. And what we're talking about with Talent Cloud, while there is a significant sort of opportunity for the business, I think the way this is truly going to take off is if we connect this on a human level to what it means to the individual. Because what it does mean is professional growth and upward mobility for individuals that have never had access before. Because it's often said that talent is spread equally, but opportunity isn't. And I think Talent Cloud now allows us to sort of create the opportunities more equally on a global basis. And that's very, very powerful. And so when you think about that, we've got good examples around how Kofax, as an AI and automation company, is delivering automation solutions to customers like DBS Singapore, which is Singapore's largest consumer bank. And what Singapore is looking to do, as most know, is really be a digital-first economy. And so they're pushing cloud electronic signature solutions to drive what DBS Singapore calls is their live more, bank less strategy. And they're doing that by infusing ID verification and electronic signatures, where previously it really required more in-person, maybe a lengthy digital interaction was required to open accounts, access all forms of consumer lending and banking services. This is a bank that wants their customers to bank less. Think about that. Almost doesn't even make sense on the surface. But when you understand that if DBS Singapore offers the best banking experience in their industry, they will simply win more banking customers and therefore benefit in profits. And so they are offering this elevated experience by leveraging automation software that non-technical employees are now taking part in building. And I think Talent Cloud now is bringing more of these previous business analysts that do not have deep technical sort of coding or engineering backgrounds onto this platform now, with now opportunities globally where they can up level. And this is, again, very powerful. And I think how people will sort of be pulled out, because we've always talked about, and in the US, we have this American dream where, rags to riches. It really doesn't matter the family that you're born into. It matters sort of the work ethic that you have and the opportunities. And there is luck, obviously, that plays into, I think, where all of us have landed. But at the end of the day, Talent Cloud, I think, is a way to democratize opportunities to those that previously were sort of relegated to having to live within sort of the means by which they were born. And that is very powerful. So I think when you think about that, the role that AI and automation plays in the future of work, I think it's absolutely a game changer.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Chris. I mean, I made some very good notes on some of the things that you mentioned, including democratization of opportunity. I think that's such a powerful theme at a very high level, and not just, sustainability. It's as big a thing as, thinking green, etc. So thank you for that, Chris. And we'll develop on that as we go forward. Claudia, I would like to come to you, and always great to hear your insights, Claudia. You lead something which is very innovative overall. I know future of work for reality labs at Meta, right? So that's too many buzzwords in just one sentence. and your team's mission is even more powerful, right? Creating software and technology for companies to build a create ecosystem on Meta's vision to give people the tools to collaborate in the metaverse, right? So there's so much that you're trying to achieve. And over your career, you have dedicated it to building innovative developer tools, product experiences for leaders in the tech industry. You were at Microsoft before this, and your team was responsible for go-to-market execution, especially on the Microsoft Cloud, AI, and the partner ecosystem. So, Claudia, what is your vision of the future of work, and how critical do you think meaningful collaborations with the ecosystem will be in driving this vision?
Thank you. Thank you so much, first of all, for having me on the panel. I'm actually really excited by the diversity of everyone who's here and all the points of view that I'm learning a lot as I'm listening to all of you. So yes, there's a lot packed into both my title and what my team does. But I think, what's really interesting is sort of how we work trust here. I actually got to lead this team and create this team right before the pandemic started. And little did I know really where we would be a couple of years later now in solving the problems that we're trying to solve. I think the biggest challenge right now is that as much as we all want sort of understand what this new normal looks like and have like a clear definition and understand what tools we need to be able to provide to people to work, we are in a situation where like the hybrid work scenario is sort of a midpoint, if you will. It's a place where like we have to provide flexibility. There's not one clear answer. And I think people just have, the key thing is we're living in a world that is highly distributed all of a sudden, as distributed as it could be, where we're working with each other and interacting with each other without thinking about what geography we're in, where we work, where we come from, who we are. And this really requires us to think about new ways to collaborate, new ways to communicate, new ways to interact. At Meta, we like to think about it as giving people a sense of presence, regardless of where they are. So, yesterday I had my first experience going back to office in 2.5 years. It was really bizarre. I guess the only way I can describe it. I felt like a kindergartner in my first day of school almost. But I think the observation I made is, what I missed the most was the human connection with people. And that is something that is very difficult to give ourselves and our people in a distributed work environment. How do you replicate that human connection? Virtual reality certainly can get you there. If I don't know how many of you have experienced it. I do quite a few of my meetings in virtual reality using our Workrooms platform. And it does give you a sense of presence. We're a long way from, I think, where we need to be. I think it's really important to be able to feel that you are talking to people next to you, and it's just as if you're sitting there in an office. There's technology like spatial audio that can help you do that, like actually hearing the person next to you in the right place where they're sitting, not somewhere in the room, in the virtual room, or feeling like the body language of the avatar is real. It's the real person and not just cartoonish. So I think there's just definitely a lot of advancements in technology that still need to come. But I do think that we have some of the tools today that we're able to experiment with that help us understand what needs to kind of happen in the future. And I really do think it revolves around making sure we continue to stay focused on the fact that, as human beings, we all need that connection. We can't lose it. We don't, you spend a day on Zoom calls and, you have Zoom fatigue, you're exhausted, it impacts your work-life balance. And so I think it's really important to make sure that we bring back that essence of like what the feeling of that kind of genuine impromptu interaction you can have with people when you're in the same place at the same time physically. I think also people are used to being productive with working with certain tools that they've used every day. We all have them. And what you don't want to do is have to force them to learn all new ways of being productive. So being able to bring, and this is where the value of the ecosystem is crucial. Our goal at Meta is in the ecosystem is to really work with our partners to be able to enable these tools to work in new ways with virtual reality and augmented reality so that people can continue to work the way that they were used to working in these new environments that we're now working in. And that's another really important aspect. And I think finally, it's just like, how do you make sure you enable proper communication? We are, again, geographically distributed, doesn't matter where you are, but it's incredibly important that does not prevent us from communicating well with each other. It is part of human connection, but it's something more. And I think it's just this idea of like really truly feeling that there's no friction between you and the other person, whether you have a screen in between you or not. And so I think that's another aspect where like the technology has to continue to advance to be able to produce that genuine environment for communication.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Claudia. That is so interesting. And we'll build on some of the points that you just mentioned as we go into the detailed section. Grace, very excited to meet you. Core engineer with Intel, more than 25 years of experience. Wow. Director of engineering, focused on software and cloud put together. And you have like excellent experience, not only on the overall software, but you are a pioneer in driving open source strategies or open source software strategy, especially in the cloud and edge space for Intel. And not only the execution part, you're looking at strategizing and also building it out very clearly for Intel. Now, what are some of the advancements in cloud and edge technologies that you're really excited about, especially in the context of this future of work that we are discussing?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me here. So I'm very excited. Let me share some of my viewpoints regarding this technology to the future of work or remote work or collaboration across in a global setting, right? So I think basically first is the cloud computing, particularly I want to talk about the microservice architecture. So if we look at cloud, many services actually are coming to provided from to cloud, from infrastructure as service, platform as service, software service, and all the way up. And the mega trend of the industry is the microservice architecture. So many less applications will be divided into this small, microservice architecture. I want to point this from engineering perspective, what that really means to us as an engineer who work on this microservice architecture. This actually means there can be small, group of people working on a subset of the business function of the big system. And that small group of a microservice team, they can choose the language and the operating system, the version of software, and they work a little bit independently. And they have their own life cycle of software from design, development, debugging, deployment, release, and they can have separate release from the other ingredient in the big software system, right? I think that actually is a huge implication to us working remotely or collaboratively across the globe, because that decouple the work into small pieces, and also will be able to, it's still from those software ingredient to the other still have dependency, but the API are clearly defined and the release cycle can be decoupled. So that is one I want to talk about. Second one I want to point is the open source. If we really look at open source, right? So it is maybe I cannot say the first, but it's proved running for decades. It's very successfully across the world with this intelligent talent cloud. So people from the whole world, from company, from the academia, and the student, professor, and the industry, all contribute, right? So I myself started to work on Linux from 2001, and we built team pretty much across the world with many outstanding engineers in different countries. So in some major sites, we built teams, and in some countries, we hired those excellent engineers just from the open source and trained them working on the open source. So I really want to bring people's, attention to the open source world. Of course, I think it's a lot of attention already, because if we look at Linux, it actually 96% of the world, the top 1 million servers are running on Linux, and 90% of the cloud infrastructure are all running on Linux. So it's not, unfamiliar with anyone, but open source is more than Linux. Of course, Linux proved itself to be very, very successful. And if you think about decades ago, the collaboration, having all these people, of course, people are very, very passionate about this. That's a very important thing to make it successful. But talking about their collaboration, their communication, it was really much relied on mailing list, right? The people submit patch. Of course, the process I think was very, very good, and also have lots of technical credit or technical talents build on this credit in this world. But with more and more open source project going on and actually the collaboration, the tools, communication becomes more and more advanced and more than mailing list. And many new project maybe not rely on mailing list at all. It's really lots of more real-time communication. If we cannot meet face-to-face, right? And in the pandemic, all these projects, or most of projects, are still very, very active and going on in the last 2 years, which I think was amazing. And I think we can learn a lot from this open source world. So that's why if I say future of the work, I will thinking it's built on the cloud computing technology, and it will build on the open source technology. So yeah.
So thank you for those very insightful perspectives. Never thought about it that way, but yeah, you're right. It is open source is the original talent cloud. And maybe the thing for us to think about is what are some of the best practices from there that we can then incorporate in how we are imagining the future of talent cloud. And Jonathan, I'm sure food for thought for you as well. Yeah, great. Jessica, I will come to you, right? So you had more than 15 years of experience, as deep experience in with talent, with people. You've been in leadership positions across multiple firms, and most recently with Netflix as their chief talent officer. That's a company that I'm trying to de-addict myself from, but yeah, I mean, definitely a wonderful firm, I'm sure, with great culture. So as an experienced, hands-on leader who has built teams and more than teams, worked your life to define culture and ensure that people understand it at scale, what do you think you have seen from a talent acquisition, talent management over the years, and what aspects do you think will be critical as we define this new future of work?
Yes. Well, thank you for the introduction, and great to be here with everyone today. I'm learning so much from everyone. I think one of the things that I'm most excited about from a talent perspective, and having run talent acquisition and HR for many years, is the opportunity that it unlocks for access to talent, but also access to opportunity for many people. And I think Chris said it very well, is that there's so much talent around the world, and able to have people tap into opportunities that they could never have otherwise, just because they weren't in the right zip code, I think is what's most exciting about what's happening in the talent cloud. And I think companies really have to push themselves to think differently and be more creative. And I think, if anything, the last few years have taught us that our old ways of working don't work anymore. And everyone's talking about the future of work, but it's actually the now of work, right? And we need to start figuring out how we can be more open-minded to what's right in front of us, right? All of this talent and all of this different opportunity to connect and work differently. And I think, as many have said on the panel, none of us have the answers, right? It's going to be trial and error, and lots of experimentation, and lots of failure. But I think there's a resistance in the system that I feel with companies that are holding on to what work was like for them 5 years ago, even 3 years ago, and they need to let go and really push themselves forward to be innovative in terms of how they access talent and how they onboard talent, how they communicate. And Claudia, was talking about connection, and you still need connection, right? Humans, even I think all humans, maybe there's a few that don't need it, but I think 99% of the world needs to feel connected. And so I think what I would love to see organizations working on is, how do they do all of this well, right? How do you have a hybrid workforce where you're tapping into talent around the world globally, but also how do you create a way of connecting for your organization that is not how you connected before? You used to see people in the coffee room or the break room, and now you don't. And so, how do you have both? Because they're both important. And so I think that there's a huge opportunity for us to, maybe learn a little bit about that on the panel today. And then, the thing that I'll say about culture is, and you mentioned, like, how do you scale this? Culture is your operating model. It's how you get alignment. It's how you work. It's how you communicate. And so that culture, and I see many companies struggle with this as well, is that they don't evolve their operating model. They don't evolve their culture. And the way you worked at 100 is different than how you're going to work at 1,000. And the way you worked when everybody was in the office is different than how you're going to work when everybody's all over the world. And so you have to really open your mind to difference, and I think the resistance that I see isn't helping with that.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Thank you so much. John, you're actually right in the thick of things, right? And you're building an AI-based deep jobs platform that allows company to actually hire teams at a push of a button and manage remote developers, remote talent. So you've been at it for a few years now, and I really want to understand your experience at being at this forefront of driving a fundamental change. It's not just a new business, but a new business model itself, and then you're trying to build technology behind it. There's so many new things that you're trying to do at the same time. I'm really excited to just hear your point of view on the experience and the challenges.
Yeah. Thank you, Sid. And it's been super exciting learning from all the wonderful panelists we have here. Yes, Sid, Turing started about 3 years ago, and we were fortunate to be in the right place at the right time as we've seen this tidal wave shift to a remote first future. And I can share lessons that I've learned from companies like Coinbase, Johnson & Johnson, Rivian, Disney, etc., that are embracing the talent cloud model and building on top of us. I find that the three main things that companies shifting to the talent cloud care about are, number one, solving for speed of hiring. In today's world, I think Chris mentioned like the market recent quote of software eating the world, and the fundamental scaling constraint is engineers, and many of these companies can't hire software engineers fast enough. So they are looking to the talent cloud as a way to broaden the hiring radius. Instead of looking for people in some neighborhood of San Francisco, they want to cast a planet-wide net. So speed of hiring is one thing that companies care about. And second, companies don't want to spend a ton of time interviewing. They would like to interview less and hire faster. And they would like some type of pre-vetting, some type of qualification so that they can trust the vetting. If you and I, like when we call an Uber, we are not like negotiating contracts with the driver or figuring out if is this driver good enough or not. Like we trust with Uber, Lyft, and these other platforms, somebody's taken that burden away from us, right? And we just want to push a button and have the car. And companies want the same. They would like to push a button and have an engineering team spun up instantly or near instantly. They care about that. And third, they care about collaboration success. They don't just care about having an engineer, they care about implementation success. They care about the work being done right, the person integrating to the company really well. I really liked what Claudia mentioned. She drew a sharp distinction between communication and connection, right? They're both different things, and you kind of have to solve for both. It's not just good enough to, I think the Craigslist model does not work for talent. Like you can't you have to really solve for post-match success. And Turing's a deep talent cloud in that we care about what happens after the person is found, right? So companies care about speed. They care about they want somebody to solve all of this for them. They care about speed. They care about not needing to interview, and they care about post-match success. And it's an exciting window of time for a lot of companies beyond Turing to solve these key challenges. Like, how do you solve sourcing talent in a global remote first world? How do you solve vetting talent? How do you solve post-match workflows? So it's an exciting time.
Interesting. Thank you so much, John. I'll come to you very quickly on the detailed section that I'm getting into right now. The first question is on the detailed section side. I will go to Chris for this first. So Chris, we discussed about this, everyone is on the same page in terms of the new reality of remote work and how pandemic has accelerated it. And all of us, all our companies are really struggling with trying to figure out how to reimagine the way we hire, the way we retrain, the way we retain folks within the firms. According to you, what are the key challenges and points to be considered for both companies and engineers when we talk about remote working?
All right, so the opening questions were the softball ones. Now we're getting into the meaty ones. So maybe an approach is my observations. So in my interactions with boards and CEOs globally, across all industries, is that they completely understand the urgency with which they need to move in order to remain relevant and competitive in their respective industries. And I think as a result of that understanding, they've placed sort of automation AI, which is where I play, at the center of their value creation strategies, both private and public companies. But what's interesting is that the next conversation, which you would think would be about, what AI and automation technologies do we really need? It's not. The next question is, who can I find to drive these modernization strategies and create the value? So that goes to talent. This is the first time in my career where talent is actually a board and CEO level conversation. Talent's no longer viewed as transactional. It's viewed as part of the corporate strategy. And I think this is a massive shift in business culture, which I think is, to Jonathan's point, like some of the massive tailwinds that are going on right now. Yes, COVID and distributed work, but there was this already sort of existing macro trend around talent no longer being viewed as transactional, but being viewed as, strategic. And so if you think about, like, in the US alone, we have nearly 11 million open jobs. Unemployment is sitting at about 3.5, 3.6%. And the labor market participation rate is at a generational low of 62%. There simply are not enough workers. And so as a leader, how do I deal with talent acquisition given that challenging environment? I firmly believe that if you have the right senior leaders in place, that there is a cascading effect where the rest of the pyramid and the overall culture will be strong. And so I say that because high performers typically have a following of younger, high potential performers. So if you hire a high performer, they will bring in other high performers. Thus, the pyramid sort of rounds itself out. An example, 2 weeks ago, I was able to hire a senior vice president, so a very senior executive from Microsoft, to join me and help me build out our global vertical strategy. So how did we do this? So I engaged this very impressive executive by flying to her hometown, getting to know her over dinner. And before you knew it, we were writing her position description together. We collaborated on it so that way she felt valuable. And we did this by addressing her need for autonomy to include 100% remote work, impact, knowing that she would not be marginalized, that she would have the right resources and place within the organization to build and execute, not just build, and obviously comp to make sure that she felt valued. Now, this personal touch works for senior executives, but we also have 6 product development locations around the world, places like India, Vietnam, 4 Western European countries. In these instances, I view partnering with Turing as the answer. So I view Turing as almost one of my high-performing direct reports, in that I trust them because of their dedicated commitment to the talent org fit to bring in the right high-performing engineering network in these remote offshore locations. So it's important for me in the current talent acquisition environment to have a very deliberate and personal approach while levering up by partnering with the likes of Turing. Because this is how I think we'll be able to acquire the best talent that's inevitably going to provide the ultimate experience to our customers. And figuring out this balance is how I believe we can achieve a win-win-win for the company, employee, and customer.
Thank you so much, Chris. I really love noting the nuggets that you keep dropping. Thank you for that. And we'll build on that. I would really want to get Jessica into the conversation. And again, Jessica, we spoke, I think a lot of people, like Chris said, are now able to differentiate different roles in HR in terms of managing culture, hiring, retaining, communicating, etc. Whereas earlier it was more of a whitewash. This is the HR role. And as we think about each of these, Jessica, and I want you to add some granularity, especially on the culture side. How do you think remote work and culture can go hand in hand, and or any other thoughts you had on the challenges and solutions thereof, Jessica?
Sure. Well, I think Chris made an interesting point that, talent and is a strategy now in the boardroom, where it wasn't a few years ago. And I think that's quite sad, because your business is really your people, and that's how you win. Generally, businesses don't fail because the ideas are really bad. They fail because the people can't work together to make something successful. So, I've been lucky to work most of my career with a company called Netflix, where talent really was our strategy, and we wanted the best people around the world, and there was big challenges in how to figure out how to do that. So I think from a practical sense, a lot of companies are having this awakening that Chris mentioned, where people are their strategy, and so they are a bit behind in how they evaluate them and how they onboard them. And I think all of this distributed work is new for everyone, right? There's many of us that have been doing it for a long time, but not in the way that we're doing it today, right? Because we've, companies like Meta and Netflix have people all over the world, so you had distributed teams. But the pandemic really kind of changed what we believed distributed to be. So I think what I would advise, or even I'm trying to push myself to think about as a talent leader, is how do I, in this new world, one, it's exciting because you have such an access to a pipeline and a pool that you didn't have before. And how do I look at the work that I have today and strategize on what really makes sense for a distributed team and what doesn't? I think, that's the other challenge that businesses have to think about, is that not all work is the same, right? And not all roles are the same. And so you need to, as leaders, zoom out and really have a strategy for what's going to be the most leverage for you in terms of where you're going to have this talent, what that work's going to be, and then how that work is going to get done. And I think what's exciting is that there's companies like Turing who are really helping organizations to be able to evaluate that and have access to vetted candidates that are really, really good. And that I think there's many businesses that cannot internally vet technical talent the way that a Turing can. And so having a partner that can really help you not only get access to that talent, but really evaluate whether that talent's going to be helpful to you or not in the long run, and what types of work and what types of project that those talents can do. The other thing that I would just encourage everyone to think about is, as you have these distributed teams and as you have leaders all around the world, culture is important, right? And your onboarding and the way that you're bringing people into the company has to be different, right? You may not be able to get everyone in the same room and have a session, or you may not be able to, have everybody go to the same, coding school that you have within your organization. So how do you also make those things accessible to everyone versus, sort of this office first mentality that Jonathan keeps talking about? So it's exciting where we are. It's, I think, scary for many because we don't have all the answers, but I think that that's what's fun. And I think if we can really leverage what we've known to be successful, but apply it differently, I think, it's a win-win, as Chris said, for organizations. 3 wins, not 2.
Thank you so much, Jessica. That was really insightful. Jonathan, I want to get your take on this because you almost kicked it off by mentioning all the challenges that we are looking at. Anything you want to add to round off with this particular section?
No, I echo Jessica's sentiments that we have to take what we know that worked really well in an office first setting and adapt it to the talent cloud. And it starts with onboarding. I think we have to make sure that we have excellent processes that work in a remote first world. At Turing, we also think very deeply about async communication. We write everything down. We took a page out of Netflix's playbook, and we actually wrote down our culture and our core values. You can write things down, but you then also have to live those values. So we think about how we can reinforce and live those values day to day. I do think even in a remote first company, there is a lot of value in meeting in person from time to time. So we think intentionally about creating meetups, smaller meetups. Turing is now an 800-person company, so we are pretty large. But we try to figure out ways for people to have more in-person meetups, offsites, things like that, and really support people to have spaces to meet in when they want to meet in person. For example, you may not have an office, but you might want to have a collaboration space in a city where you have a lot of people, so that they have the option of going somewhere to meet and brainstorm if they want to do that. It's all about, when I think of the talent cloud, I think about freedom, opportunity, and flexibility, like giving people the flexibility and space to do their best work. I'm also really excited to also hear about all the new amazing tools that we might have to bring us closer together, both in terms of connection and communication. Excited to hear more about Claudia, and I love that Meta is sort of at the forefront of pushing the world towards a bright future for virtual reality. At some point, I imagine it's going to be fun, like where we might be talking to holograms of ourselves, and maybe we'll get a little bit lost in our virtual worlds. It may sound a little bit like a Black Mirror episode, but I do think we are getting to a future where it might be harder and harder to distinguish the virtual world from the real world, and it may not always be a bad thing.
Jonathan, for a moment, I thought you're running for president. Freedom, opportunity, flexibility. Isn't that what all of us want? Great, but yeah, I think the topic is that broad and impactful. So I would like to get Grace and Claudia on this question, and this is more in terms of, we've seen very core work packages being delivered remotely. Almost everything that you can imagine, we have been able to deliver remotely. And maybe Grace first. So in your mind, Grace, what technologies do you think will be critical in optimizing, this hybrid workload and bringing it to reality as we go forward?
Yes. So I want to point out is in this hybrid world or remote, right? So from the engineering, software engineering perspective, I think this development cloud, the development ops process, the automation, I think that will be pretty critical to optimize our process. So development ops actually combine the software development with the business operations, and it can have many different formats. But I believe each of those, when we put the business needs requirements together, combined with the software architecture, we can optimize and make things. First, the development ops, most of them are automation, right? And lots of automation. But also, if we thinking about the talents are global, in remote setting, I think many automation and optimization can happen there, and actually can take advantage of the talents being in different country or different time zone. So let me give you one example. So a few years ago, when I managed a system integration team for Intel for the Android OS development, and which was a pretty global setting because we have different ingredient components team for the software, subsystems in the Android side. We actually daily basis, we need to continuously generate, release and validation, and all this actually have I benefit a lot. Or I on purpose to set up team in different time zone because we can have this coverage. And like I said, many things are automation, but the some of the when the issue happened, the charge of the issue and the really root cause issue, we need the people and engineer jump in to look at those. So that actually take advantage of the technical leadership in US, in Asia, in Europe to make sure this 24/7 system running smoothly for a big scale of software developers. So I just take that example. I'm thinking, the last 2 years we learn a lot, right? Many industry or many companies should learn a lot when we are in this remote setting and work. But optimizing on the development ops process and the tools can benefit a lot. So yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Grace. Claudia, your view on this, please.
Yes. So we talk a lot about communication, and I would like to kind of focus on the differences between communication and collaboration. I think that before we all sort of found ourselves here where we are today, before the pandemic, communication technologies were, in my opinion, almost a fallback plan to the way we worked. So, you had them to support. So if you couldn't have an in-person meeting, you could always join through a video call. And we had, technologies available in conference rooms to do that. But it really wasn't sort of the primary way, right? We worked or we collaborated. And as I think we found ourselves in this new environment, it became really important to not just communicate, but collaborate. And the tools that we were using weren't really serving that purpose at all. I have a colleague, and I'm not going to take credit for this because I think it's a brilliant observation. I have a colleague who actually, someone on my team who is working with ecosystem partners on collaboration solutions. And he says that today in our work environment, collaboration is the air we breathe. And it's not a feature. A lot of people say, oh, is this application collaborative? Does it have collaboration features? And he constantly reminds people that collaboration is so much bigger than a feature, right, in a tool that we use. It's really the way we actually work. It's the way we actually make sure we are productive, that we interact correctly, we communicate, et cetera. So I think having the appropriate tools, having sort of a collaboration platform to work on is crucial today. From the Meta perspective, especially from the Reality Labs perspective, that is what we're focusing on. It expresses itself, it manifests itself in a number of different ways. For example, when we all found ourselves working from home 2 years ago, Meta provided all of its employees with the opportunity of using its Portal device. I actually have been working on the Portal product for 4 years in partnerships. And if you don't know what it is, it has a camera that is an AI, a smart camera that is able to actually focus in on you. I'm speaking to you today on Portal with Zoom. And it has audio that almost pins a mic to you. So it creates this true sense of presence where I tend to forget that I have a screen in front of me when I'm speaking to you. And I feel more connected to you when I'm speaking to you because I can see you, I can interact with you. And it was really important for Meta, for our employees to be able to use this tool. It's not just, oh, I'm giving you a second screen. It's I'm giving you a way to remain connected with your colleagues while you're doing the work that you're doing wherever you are. And so that was one approach that we took and that is teaching us a lot about what needs to happen from a video conferencing perspective, video calling perspective. In virtual reality, we've sort of applied the same kind of principles of, building a collaboration platform. As I said earlier, giving people that sense of presence, having spatial audio so you feel like when someone is speaking to you, where they're sitting and where the voice is coming from, and the movements of, yes, someday will be a mix of us, like we are now, seeing each other and our avatars, all talking together, and it should be seamless. It shouldn't matter whether or not you're speaking to me and you can actually see a real picture of me on the video screen, or whether you actually seeing an avatar of me. And so truly, like, focusing on how we implement collaboration and how we provide those tools is crucial in the future. And I agree with what Jessica said. It's now, it's not the future. Like the reality is now. In fact, the reality was 2 years ago. And, we've all had to live with this, and we just need to really get better at it and make sure that we accept this new way of working.
Right. Thank you so much, Claudia. And I'll move on to almost the next section, right? So just as John was mentioning, and the initiatives that John and the Curing are taking, what we are seeing is, this opportunity is also seeing a number of different type of players, right? And we have seen an uptick of companies categorized as talent cloud. They're building, large pools of pre-vetted developers, which can be accessed for short and long term. So Jessica, I might want to start with you, right? Because you've seen this closely, and you've been part of, really hands-on recruitment and retaining, etc. So what, in your view, what is your view on the emergence of these companies, and what would differentiate each of them, the mediocre ones from the great ones, and what kind of challenges do you want to educate the audience on? What do you need to really look for when you're looking at companies that are trying to solve for talent cloud?
Well, it's a loaded question. I'll try to break it down. So, look, I think there's what employees want, there's what employers want, and some of those things are totally aligned, and some of those things are differences that they hold. And so I think employees, they're looking for something new. I think we're seeing that they want flexibility, they want growth, they want companies to care about them and value them, and not look at them as a commodity, which maybe in the past had been more of the case. And I think employers, they want great talent. They want their business to be successful. And I think if you can find a way as an organization to marry all of this in a way that is compromised and healthy, I think you're off to a really good start. I think, again, the resistance on each side likely isn't helpful, and open-mindedness about this way of working that is new for all of us is perhaps where we all need to be mentally and emotionally, right? And there needs to be some compassion on each side for experimentation, failure, and learning. And I think if we can all have a learning attitude and not expect perfection, I think that's going to go a long way. And then I think, again, it's if everyone has sort of this mentality to embrace where we are versus resist and push back on it, I think we'll get a lot further, a lot faster. And in terms of retaining employees, I think it's the same deal as it always was and is. Employees stay because they love the work, they love the people they're surrounded by, and they have a good leader. Of course, pay and benefits and things matter, but employees don't really leave because you have one perk and this other company has this other perk. Employees leave because they don't feel valued and they don't feel like they're working with people who are inspiring and care about them. And so I think if, as an organization, you can create a world where you have the best leaders and the best people, and you have an operating model, which is your culture, that evolves as you grow and scale and are different, then you'll be a lot further ahead than most others.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jessica. I know it was a complex question, but you really broke it down very well. Thank you for that, Jessica. Grace, almost the same question for you, but more as a practitioner who is trying to leverage, Talent Cloud. Again, all of this is pretty new. What, according to you, would be, the top challenges, or let's even talk about what would be your key expectations out of companies that are trying to solve for Talent Cloud?
Yeah, so if I look at the Talent Cloud, right, so we know the people are remote, and not only remote, but also pretty global, but they bring the domain expertise in the project or in the to the business. So the challenge I see, not particular just for my team or our company, I think generally speaking, I'm thinking about from a company perspective, maybe it's really about if I build engineering team, I'm thinking people might thinking really about, hey, and solve the problem in common, like you need to solve it and then really be able to deploy, let's say, software, right? And testing, implementation, and release and deploy. So I think the challenge may people really thinking about how this distributed team or the talents will be able to make sure all these things will be able to deploy correctly. If I don't have a physical lab or physical testing environment they can work on. So I want to talk about that perspective. So I think from many technology actually help to solve that already. So inside, for example, in Intel, we have lots of hardware sharing for internally for the engineering to work on. So people can just request a piece of computing resources from this internal cloud, right, and share, even with the very latest technology. But I'm not sure if people know, like externally, actually people can access those as well. We have this Intel Dev Cloud, and which can provide the latest Intel hardware for people to test with, and prototype, test, and deploy, and try out. So that can solve people's, being afraid or being worried regarding whether they have a physical lab for the distributed talents to work with. So take advantage of those resources from the industry, like Intel, Dev Cloud, or other CSP have similar things as well. So I think those will be not only hardware for Intel Dev Cloud, it's also the latest software with the most advanced or latest hardware platform features turned on. So I think those will be a good thing to address for many companies to say, if I have a remote talent or distributed team, how they work together, especially facing this real engineering, release and deployment issues and testing, prototyping, right? So all of this. So I will really encourage that.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Grace. That is very insightful and very clear at different levels. Thank you so much, Grace. Chris, I will come to you with almost a similar question, but considering that Kofax is maybe slightly better than many of the other firms in trying to leverage Talent Cloud, and you have a little more experience. So when you're working with, say, a Turing or companies as such, what are your key expectations? And more importantly, how do you measure success of such collaboration?
So it felt like we were really collaborating together, and now all of a sudden there's this Lord of Flies component that you brought in by saying, like, I do things better. I move really fast. I don't know that the quality of it is better than anybody else. I have so many partners in this. So I would say that, and I think all of us believe this, is that partnerships are most successful when they are built on trust. I think Turing has a strong understanding of talent sourcing and provides those insights to ensure that the needs of our businesses are filled with the right candidates so that we collectively drive impactful results. For any relationship to withstand the test of time, you really need to stay disciplined to what made it work in the first place. So I think Turing will need to stay disciplined in doing the due diligence of understanding our business. And with that understanding, then advising us on the optimal talent org fit. And so as long as we stay disciplined there, I think we're in good shape, because what I've learned over time is that the right talent in the wrong organization is a lose-lose. The individual has wasted time. They've become disenfranchised with sort of like the uniqueness that they've brought in the first place, but seemingly isn't working now. And it's not because of them, it's because of the situation. And then the organization obviously didn't get what it is they needed in that particular moment. So everybody loses, and it never needed to be that way. So we spend a good amount of time upfront ensuring that we understand the talent true north of the problem that we're trying to solve for. We don't just rush to trying to solve the problem and then throw, a body at it, as they say. We really focus on understanding the talent true north of the problem. And post-hiring, we simply measure for effect, meaning that we have agreed upon, key performance indicators, KPIs, for given, locations around the world. There's not a one size fits all. Product lines, teams, individuals. And over time, we're able to determine how many, Turing candidates have fully acclimated into our culture. Are they contributing to product and team success? And then individually, are they staying engaged? So I think there are, quantitative measures to determine like, how is the relationship and where do we need to apply some effort and energy to improve? But I would say like those are some of the ways that you can sort of, set expectations, manage to them.
Thank you so much, Chris. And again, as always, some interesting nuggets that I will note down. Yeah, that's John is already at it. So great. So I have just about 5 minutes plus left, and I'll move on to almost the final question, which is about rounding off the discussion and also peering a little bit into the future, especially the future of Intelligent Talent Cloud. And as I do so, I think we had a couple of interesting questions from the audience, and I will come to Claudia first. So Claudia, as you answer my question, you can also answer the audience question. So first, let me go to the audience question, right? So Claudia, and you're working on something very interesting, and what people are interested to, people are really excited to understand is, where do you think will we see some of the early adoption of the use cases of what you are actually working on, Reality Labs? And I think Prakash asked that question, and it's something that I really want to understand as well. So maybe you can answer that quickly, Claudia, and then I'll get you to the last question, and we'll round it off with the other panelists.
And if I may pile on,
go on. Yeah.
What are Claudia's recommendations for a remote work setup? Like, what cool VR gadgets can we buy?
Okay, well, that's a great question. So in terms of the first question, first, the use cases, we're actually doing it today. I just, I don't want to be presumptive. I work for a company where we do have a lot of cool products, and we have access to the technologies, but I do feel like they are accessible to everyone. It's not just me or us. And so, maybe almost going into from the first question to the second question, I'm using the technologies today. I do, a good part of my meetings with my, VR headset, sitting here in my docking station, literally next to my computer. And I put it on, and it's, I wouldn't spend all day in it. I think in the future, we need to make them more comfortable with, even longer battery life lighters, so that they don't, they're not heavy on your head when you're using them. But I do use them. I use it all the time, and I have meetings with my colleagues. At Meta, we actually have the ability to just click into a meeting in a frictionless way from our calendar, whether it's in Workrooms in VR or whether it's on Portal, which is what I'm using now. So that's the other thing, right? It's like, when what you really should have on your desk is the best video conferencing setup that makes you like not even think about the fact that you're joining a meeting in this way. You're walking into a meeting room in your office. The only thing you're thinking about is where's the meeting room, right? But I mean, at the end of the day, should be even easier. You don't have to do that. You just have to click and join, and that's it. You're in the meeting, and you can quickly work. And that's the thing. I have a portal on my desk that I'm talking to you on. I have my computer, my display next to me. I can collaborate, work, be productive while I'm actually conducting my meeting. And in VR, I can literally switch from VR back into my desktop environment and have access to my personal desktop and my calendar, my email in VR. So that's today now. We're doing it today. So, the tools are here. There's a lot of opportunity in the future, as we've talked about, to make them better for human connection, make them better for collaboration, but really they exist now. So I encourage people to try them because I do think that it will make them enjoy, if you will, this experience a lot more in the way that they collaborate with their colleagues.
Wow, I really, have what the teenagers call FOMO right now.
Try it out.
Yeah.
Check it out.
Yeah. So John, maybe you want to distribute some of these to your top customers and developers.
That sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, I think this is as good as it gets from the future of Talent Cloud from experience perspective. And thank you so much for that, Claudia. So I'll go with my final question, and I will start with Jessica, yourself, and John, maybe you can close off the conversation with your comments on this one. But again, just building on what Claudia spoke, mainly from a technology side, but overall, how do you see this intelligent talent cloud evolving? And I'm sure we are trying to solve multiple problems, but what are some of the top challenges that you still see are unsolved, and what we need to figure out to ensure that there is a win-win-win for across the board, right? Customer, company, and developers per se. So Jessica, go for it, and John, feel free to add in towards the end.
Well, one of the things that I kept thinking about through the conversation is this idea of intentionality. And so I think, when you are trying to figure out your way through the forest in this, new way of working that we're all in, you have to be really intentional. You have to be intentional about the time you're, on your video, and maybe, I had some FOMO too. Maybe we can all get all the stuff Claudia has, and be more connected and feel more personal when we're in this virtual world. But we also have to be equally intentional when we're together. And I think that that's what we've learned. Like, being together no longer is just like you have to be in the office 9 to 5 to be together. When you're together, it's about building trust and connection and having inspiration and collaboration. And so I think you'll see that workplaces become more of like offsite places than they are a sea of cubicles, right? And it's space where people can come together and collaborate and talk about strategy and work through the hard problems. And so what I'm trying to push myself to think about is this idea of intentionality. And I think if we all do that, I think it'll be a good thing, and perhaps the win-win-win that we've all been talking about.
Perfect. And I think that's a very, very deep point, Jessica, intentionality. Great. John, over to you. Future of what you are building.
Yeah. Thank you, Sid. Great panel. I think we are entering an exciting era for remote work, distributed teams. I'm super excited for what's to come. I think there's a ton of opportunity to solve for collaboration, communication, connection in the talent cloud. To Jessica's point, I think intentionality is super important. And I'm excited for like how much headroom and white space there is. And Jessica, for those who are not familiar, is is a VC at TCV, one of the world's largest venture firms. They've invested in a few small companies that I'm sure none of us have heard of, like Facebook, Spotify, Airbnb, Zillow. So for those building some of these cool companies that will take the talent cloud forward, you should look up Jessica at TCV and follow up with her. I'm just energized from this conversation. I think it just feels like we're entering a boundaryless future, right? The shackles of the office are done. Jessica's quote that, on-site is the new off-site, right? Like we do want to meet occasionally in person, but that's not the default. I'm excited for a future filled with opportunity for people. Like great people will be able to have access to Silicon Valley opportunity from anywhere. Great companies will be able to have a hiring radius that spans the entire planet. It's going to be good for the world. I'm super excited for the future. Thank you all for joining us. And Chris, I wanted to just close out with one comment from you. Kofax's theme is intelligent automation for a wide variety of businesses and companies. If people want to learn more, what should they do about how Kofax can help them?
Yeah, so I'm a big proponent of leadership by example. And I think that becomes a very sort of contagious action throughout an organization. And so I make myself very, very accessible. And so just chris.huff@kofax.com. And I pride myself on being really responsive because I learned so much in those interactions. So easy enough just to reach out to me.
Thank you. So that's chris.huff@kofax.com. And Grace, I remember your comment about, which is so thoughtful. I mean, open source is the first talent cloud, and your team does a lot of work on open source. If people are interested to learn more, like what should they do next?
So yeah, you can visit the Intel. Intel will have this open source strategy on the open strategy. So definitely visit the open the Intel website, and you can. Actually, Intel is not a hardware company, and only. So we produce lots of advanced software as well. So I will be very glad that you visit those. So yeah.
That sounds great. And your comment about the Intel Dev Cloud was super interesting. And it's those types of that type of software sort of eliminates the need for a physical office for people to test from anywhere, work from anywhere. Super insightful.
Yeah.
And finally, Claudia, you teased us with all the cool gadgets that we should look forward to. I think I'm looking forward to Christmas later this year. And if people are interested in the work that you and your team do, what would you like them to do to reach out?
Yes, I mean, also like Grace, we have a great website with lots of resources. If you want to learn more about some of the tools I spoke about, whether it's the Quest virtual reality headset, you can go on the Meta website and you will find information about our products, or Portal, which is the video calling device that I'm speaking on right now that we've used. And there's a whole lot of information that we have shared publicly about our strategy for work in the metaverse and the new way of working that Meta is driving. So again, all of that is on our website, very accessible to everyone.
Thank you, Claudia. And Jessica, for you, what should founders building great companies, how do they get in touch with you?
Well, you can email me at TCV, jneal@tcv.com. And, we're always looking for new investments who are disrupting and pushing the limits of innovation. And so if that is you, we're happy to hear from you.
That sounds great. Thank you, Jessica. And for all the companies, I'm speaking to heads of engineering, CTOs, VPs of engineering. If you need an engineer or if you need engineering teams, do check us out at Turing.com so you can push a button and spin up your engineering dream team in the cloud. Our goal is to make sure you have the right talent at the touch of a button. And thank you all for joining us today for this kickoff of this Talent Cloud. And I think we'll look at this day, maybe it's April 28th, 2022, as the spark of something that's wonderful for the world, creates a lot of opportunity for amazing people all over the planet. And hopefully we can unleash the world's untapped human potential, right? And that would be a fun future to look forward to. Back to you, Siddharth.
Thank you all so much. I'll just hand it back to Natalia for formal closing comments, and thank you to each and every one of you, including the attendees.